There was a very consequential vote this week in the U.S. Senate. Republicans, along with two Democrats, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, blocked the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That bill would have updated the 1965 Voting Rights Act that was gutted by the Supreme Court and would have expanded election access across the country to counter some 33 new laws in 19 Republican-led states, laws that are designed, a lot of voting experts say, to suppress minority votes. After the John Lewis Voting Rights Act was defeated, Sinema shook hands with Republican senators. Before the vote, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell told reporters minority voters had nothing to fear with all of these new restrictions cropping up across the country.
What's your message for voters of color who are concerned that without the John L. Lewis Voting Rights Act, they're not going to be able to vote in the midterm?
Well, the concern is misplaced because if you look at the statistics, African American voters are voting in just as high a percentage as Americans.
Now, McConnell has said since all of this that he misspoke there, but that did not convince the countless citizens on social media who started the hashtag MitchPlease and posted pictures with the message, "We are Americans." Perhaps many people remember what McConnell and other GOP leaders said back in 2006, not that long ago, when every Republican in the Senate voted to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act, and it passed at that time 98-0.
One of my favorite sayings that many of us use from time to time is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is a good piece of legislation that has served an important purpose over many, many years. And this landmark piece of legislation will continue to make a difference, not only in the South, but for all of America and for all of us, whether we're African Americans or not.
I hope 25 years from now, it can be said that there will be no need for the Voting Rights Act because things have changed for the better.
It would be nice if there were no need for a Voting Rights Act, as 2006 Senator Lindsey Graham just said. But consider what's been taking place in these Republican state houses. For starters, the new voting restrictions passed in those 19 GOP-led states have been predicated on the big lie that the election was rigged. It wasn't. We all know that now. And if you're still saying it was rigged, please get help. Then there are the various provisions in these state laws that appear to target voters of color, with provisions that limit mail drop boxes and offer less time to request an absentee ballot, among other ways that make it harder to vote. Georgia famously passed a law that threatens to punish people who hand out water and snacks to voters waiting in long lines. Ain't that a peach? Studies in recent years have shown that voting lines are longer in minority communities. In Texas, the state's Republican Party tweeted the quiet part out loud, saying recently, if you can wait in line for a COVID test, you can wait in line to vote. Then there are the more recent developments in places like Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis is proposing an election police force.
To ensure that elections are conducted in accordance with the rule of law, I've proposed an election integrity unit whose sole focus will be the enforcement of Florida's election laws. This will facilitate the faithful enforcement of election laws and will provide Floridians with the confidence that their vote will matter.
Which is wild, because DeSantis was bragging right after the 2020 election that Florida was a model for the nation when it comes to running elections.
People are actually looking at Florida and asking the question, why can't these states be more like Florida?
Why can't these states be more like Florida, he asked. Well, Georgia Republican candidate for governor David Perdue wants to be more like DeSantis. The Trump-endorsed Perdue is now also proposing an election police force, saying in a statement the purpose of this law enforcement unit is to give Georgians confidence that only legal votes will be counted and that anyone who tries to interfere with our elections will be arrested and prosecuted. But we have not gotten to the most egregious part yet, and that's the ongoing efforts to place the most Trumpy election truther Republicans in key Secretary of State positions across the country. Yes, the same positions that preside over our elections. We're talking about people like Mark Finchem, who is the Trump-backed GOP candidate for Secretary of State in Arizona. Finchem, CNN has reported, has supported QAnon conspiracy theories.
I look forward to the day that we set aside an irredeemably flawed election. That's the election of 2020. With all the evidence we have, the Arizona election should be decertified with cause by the legislature.
Donald Trump, who looks like he's running for president or pretending to run for president, honestly, what's the difference? Sounds pretty interested in who will be counting the votes next time around.
We have to be a lot sharper the next time when it comes to counting the vote. There's a famous statement, sometimes the vote counter is more important than the candidate, and we can't let that ever happen again. They have to get tougher and smarter.
You know, if Ron DeSantis wants to put that election police force to good use, he might consider sending them over to Mar-a-Lago. You know, just to ask a few questions about an attempted coup. Yes, Officer Ron, I'd like to report an insurrection, the one on January 6th. But all of this is why the various investigations into Trump's actions leading up to and during the January 6th attack on the Capitol are so monumentally important right now. The January 6th committee's probe is moving closer to Trump, focusing on the big names in his inner circle, people like his daughter Ivanka Trump, who received a letter from the committee asking for information about her father's actions in the days leading up to and on January 6th. And then there's Rudy Giuliani. Apparently he did more than hold a news conference at the Four Seasons Total Landscaping Company. CNN reports Giuliani was leading the effort to have bogus electors send in fake certificates to the National Archives, falsely claiming Trump won 7 battleground states. Giuliani seems to have some free time on his hands these days, as he appears to be selling autographed 9/11 t-shirts for $911. Rudy never forgets how to make a buck. Some on the far right apparently want you to forget the sacrifices made by John Lewis and other icons of the civil rights movement during their epic struggle for equal access to the ballot box back in the 1960s. States like Florida are attempting to limit discussions of race in public schools, barring instruction that makes students feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race, color, sex, or national origin. Are they allowed to teach kids about what happened to John Lewis? Or might that hurt their feelings? Well, this is what happened to John Lewis on March 7th, 1965, when he and other civil rights leaders marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Alabama. They were beaten by police simply because they believed in something as simple as equal access to the voting booth. Lewis suffered a cracked skull on that day, which became known as Bloody Sunday. Lewis spoke about the struggle during his address to the Democratic Convention in 2012.
Not too long ago, people stood in unmovable lines. They had to pass a so-called literacy test, pay a poll tax. On one occasion, a man was asked to count the number of bubbles in a bar of soap. On another occasion, one was asked to count the jelly beans in a jar, all to keep them from casting their ballot. I've seen this before. I lived this before. Too many people struggled, suffered, and died to make it possible for every American to exercise their right to vote.
John Lewis used to talk about the virtues of good trouble. Something tells me the politicians standing in the way of voting rights are about to get a lesson in what that's all about. Perhaps these efforts to stop the vote will backfire and actually motivate people to stand in long lines to cast their ballots. Cops or no cops, make sure to pack plenty of snacks and water. They're going to need it.